Hello, thank you for joining me. If you're new here, welcome. And if you did see the earlier video, the previous video, thanks for coming back. I'm glad I didn't scare you away with my noob video recording skills. Today, I'm going to be talking about chapters 1 through 3 of this book, Steal Like an Artist by Kleon. I'm sharing my feelings and thoughts about the advice and the content, not a review of the style or the writing method or anything like that. So it's not a review per se not like a book review, it is more an idea review. I can say that since I've already read this before, which I mentioned in the previous video, I can say I do already recommend it, and so that's not an issue. So what I'm going to go through with in this is just talk about what chapters 1 through 3 are talking about, and how we, and my reaction to them, my 2 cents on the ideas that are presented. Chapter 1 is titled Steal Like an Artist, and just a caveat is that no way or shape or form is this book encouraging anyone to break into a museum or a gallery and steal things off the walls. This is a book about stealing ideas. Understanding that nothing is original, and that we once we feel okay with the idea that nothing is original, we can embrace the beauty of influence and the reality of influence on our art and in pretty much everything that we do. If we want to break it, think about it like genetics or the genealogy of ideas. So if you think of genetics, like in this illustration, biologically speaking, offspring are a little bit of each of their biological parents. And the child is a mixture. So 2 different things came together and made this new thing, but each of those 2 things also have brackets going above them that all of these things have funneled down into the new original but highly influenced new creation. I like to think of the concept of interbeing that was developed by Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, and he mentions that everything relies on everything else in the cosmos in order to manifest, whether a star, a cloud, a flower, a tree, or you or me. Basically what he's saying is that everything that happens, everything that is, has relied on something else to help it come into being. Whether it be a tree, relied on the parent tree, probably relied on bees pollinating, relied on all kinds of different things. The sun, rain, all of these other things influenced that tree being germinating, growing, turning into its, growing to be a big tree and making seeds and making new trees as well. I have a visitor. This is Vincent. Hello, Vincent. Vincent also, he is my assistant and likes to help me with my artwork as well, right? All right, so the nice thing is, unlike genetics, we get to choose what feeds our imagination. So we can go out and collect ideas that will excite our artistic creativity juices. It's important to collect good ideas. Don't just collect willy-nilly. Be selective. Find things that you know are going to be helpful to moving you forward or giving you new ways of thinking about things or new ways of approaching your artwork, or things that will just help expand your artistic repertoire. So be selective, be choosy, and as Austin says, Google everything. You want to make sure that you use Google. You have the world at your fingertips. You can Google museums. You can Google types of art. You can say figurative art, floral art. You can look up almost anything on Google. On the written blog, I have a couple sample things where you can just say, type in world's greatest art, and it will take you to, obviously, it'll probably take you to Leonardo and Michelangelo, Picasso, things like that right off the bat. But that can start you on a longer or a wider a wider possibility, because just like the idea of the World Wide Web, one thing leads to another, just like what we were talking about earlier about our influences and the way things influence each other. I'm a big fan of Pinterest, and I like to go through when I'm doing those searches is just pin things into my file of other people's artwork that I find interesting. So Pinterest and pinning things is a big pastime of mine. I have file folders on my computer and on Google Cloud of artwork that I have downloaded that I'd like to be able to look at bigger. What's one thing that with Pinterest is a lot of times if you click on something just to see it bigger, it takes you to another website and then you have to find it. So that's a downside of Pinterest. So sometimes just copying and saving things just to have in your file to look at, having actual pieces of paper, things cut out from magazines, prints, postcards, things like that. I think those are wonderful to have. So if you have the space, it's great to have an analog file of images to refer to. And a really important thing that Austin talks about in the book, and I am a big proponent of, is having sketchbooks and journals. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You can go to the dollar store and get a cheap sketchbook. You know, it can have lines on it, doesn't matter. And also some things to write with, because there's nothing worse than getting out your sketchbook and finding out you don't have a pencil. So make sure you have things, you have the tools you need. Pack up, you know, throw it in your bag, throw a sketchbook in your bag, or get a small one that you can put in your pocket, or your messenger bag or purse, or whatever you have where you carry things around. Or get an app on your phone where you can draw. So, you know, there's no excuse not to be able to do it. You should be able to sketch and draw and write down notes almost anywhere you are nowadays. So do that. In the blog, I'll have some links to some helpful art supplies and places to get artistic journals. Otherwise, again, you know, your dollar store will have a ton of those. I go to the dollar store near me all the time to get cheap art supplies for just when I'm screwing around and doodling, because I find that to be a great way to get things done. Chapter 2 is Don't Wait to Get Started. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Don't wait until you know who you are to get started. And this is a great idea. I think a lot of times as artists we can tell ourselves, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready to show my work. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for that. And I think it's important to get past that and get to the point where I am an artist now. I know it might feel weird at first to say I'm an artist, because I think we have ideas in our head, and there's an earlier blog post about this idea of one of the ideas is creative visualization, is you see things and you make them manifest. So if you keep telling yourself, I'm not ready, I don't feel comfortable calling myself an artist yet, you're just reinforcing the idea that you're not an artist. So if you do the opposite, you'll reinforce the idea that you are an artist, that you are worthy and you are good. Imposter syndrome is something that I think is really prevalent in the creative community. It's also outside of the creative community. It's where we have the abilities to do the things that we're trying to do, but we continually tell ourselves that we're not good enough, that, oh, that other guy, he's way better. Oh, look, she's a much better artist than I am. We compare ourselves to other people. We put really unfair obstacles up against our own success. I'm going to suggest a TED Talk, and I'll put the video link in the description, by Lou Solomon. It's a TEDx where she talks about the Fantastic Four symptoms of imposter syndrome, which are anxiety, perfectionism, self-doubt, and the fear of failure. And I know sometimes when I'm either in just my job or in my making art, those can all happen, sometimes all at once. And it can be debilitating at times unless you stop and think, this is what's happening. And once you realize that this is something that's happening, it is your mind is trying to screw with you a little bit. Hopefully you'll be able to move past it. It's also helpful to talk to people about it. Just say, gosh, I'm feeling like I have imposter syndrome. talking about things like this, especially with other artists, is I think very beneficial, which is really important. A lot of artists, I think, are often creating alone and working alone. So anytime when we can have a community where we can talk to each other about these kinds of issues, I think it's really helpful and great. So you want to make sure that you copy, but don't plagiarize. Copying is an important tool. I'm going to share a small, some photos of some things that I did in school where we were trying to copy. We were copying artists, and the class was specifically about artists and their own sketchbooks to help us learn how to properly, or not properly, but because you can do a sketchbook any way you like, but ways that other artists have done it, again, to help influence the way we go forward. Again, there's that learning from our fathers and mothers about how to get the most benefit out of things. So by looking at somebody who's really good, one person I think, to look at the sketchbooks of Edward Hopper, is he has amazing sketchbooks. Looking at artist sketchbooks is a great way to see how artists have used their sketchbooks to come up with the ideas, or to work through ideas before they commit them to, let's say, paint or sculpture or things like that. If you make changes to it, if you improve on it, if you maybe make a statement about it or what it represents, then you're changing it and you are making it into your own work. It can reference other things, obviously, but so learning that line between copying and plagiarizing, and then keeping up a practice. It's always good to look at those people who've come before us, or people who are contemporaries, and see what people are doing. And that's why there's art magazines and art websites that we can use to look at to find new ways of taking our artwork and turning it into something new. On page 39 of the book, Austin gives you a good handy guide of what is good theft and what is bad theft. So I have that up there on the screen so you can look at that. So you want to honor, not degrade. You want to study, not just skim. Steal from many, don't just steal from one. For example, for me, I've been a big fan of Michelangelo when I was younger. And that led to looking at other Renaissance artists, and the Renaissance leading on to Baroque, and then the Baroque leading on to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, with that idea of one thing leads to another. Chapter 3 is to write the book that you want to read. And the idea is, with our art, and we want to make the art that we would like to see. We should feel proud of what we put out there and not embarrassed. I would say a caveat, an asterisk on this might be if you're working for a client and you have a contract, or you have agreed to do a project for a client to their liking. Hopefully, because they picked you, they already know your style and your palette, and you won't have to give up too much of your individuality and your own unique flair. But keep that in mind, that you want to feel good about what you do. Well, I want to thank you for stopping by today. The next video is going to be chapters 4 and 5, and the references to some of the books that I've mentioned are below. And also, please do visit my written blog, which is at artnownotlater.com, where you can see a few more links to different concepts that have been presented here, and also some links to some helpful places to get some art supplies, get journals, get any kind of thing that you would like. Some of them offer deals. Just as a caveat, I do get a small percentage for sending people that way. And I hope to see you in the next video where we talk about chapters 4 and 5. Thanks a lot for joining, and I hope to see you really soon. Bye-bye.